after the time you spent in Indy, being around these people and in that world, in that big stadium and the dome, what is more important to you? What you saw with your eyes the last week, or what you saw on film and sometimes with your eyes the last 2 years?
Still what I saw the last 2 years. Like, it's still, if you're asking me which quarterback do I take, it still would probably be Bryce Young first. And I understand
what's your order now.
He's an outlier. I still probably think it's Young, Stroud, Richardson, but like, I get the whole Richardson thing. Like, I get why. And you can make the argument that somebody else designing an offense around him, maybe that works. Or he's just young. This was his first year as a starter. Like, I can give you chapter verse of all the different reasons why there's a chance he can move.
Well, what was his problem in college? Was he erratic? Was he like Joe Milton, but less?
Erratic, inconsistent mechanics, and then decision making. The missing reads at times. So his stats, if you look, similar to Allen his last year at Wyoming. The one guy I saw that I went through the last 10 drafts to see if anybody else was a similar completion percentage. Christian Hackenberg, actually, and Trace McSorley, very similar last seasons at Penn State. But and obviously those are two very different quarterbacks. But yeah, I don't know. I understand, though. I understand now, if you're an NFL general manager and you need a franchise quarterback, you can't risk letting him drop. Which, I criticized the Daniel Jones pick a lot too. And now looking back on it, I didn't go to that combine, but I understand that one better too now, because Daniel Jones also didn't really drag Duke to having a dynamic offense, although it was better than Duke's offense usually is. But when you look at him play and you see all of the tools, you understand why the Giants took him where they took him.
Yeah, the 2019 draft was when Daniel Jones went, right? So people were criticizing it because he was taken over Josh Allen, right? Like, he got picked before Josh Allen and Dwayne Haskins, who I think were rated higher going into the combine. And I guess it's really tough to swallow now if you're a Giants fan, because Josh Allen, in my opinion, I don't know, Mahomes is Mahomes, but is at least in the discussion for the most. Or
he's one of the best quarterbacks. Yeah, he's one of the best 3 or 4 quarterbacks.
So I don't know if the Daniel Jones pick was laughed at because of Daniel Jones. I think it was laughed at because of who he was chosen over at the time. And I think that could happen again this year. But the thing too is, like, Bryce Young measured 5'10.5", I think, or was it 5'11-ish?
204. That was the key number for Bryce Young. He got over 200.
So his size was a success then.
Yes, it makes him less of an outlier now because he's closer to.
But what's scarier to you? Like, to me, does the size scare you?
The size scares you because what happens if he's not durable? Now, the reason I don't worry about that as much as I watched him play in the SEC for 2 years. He missed one game with a sprained shoulder. And, there are quarterbacks who, larger quarterbacks who've missed games because they got hurt. So
has Kyler been pretty good about his health
until this
NFL? This year he missed a ton of time. Yeah. Yeah, that's the only thing that scares me. But it's just like, if you go and you look at the actual picks, there is some concern. I think you can nag all 3 of the top guys, right?
You can. I mean, you can. There's not like next year when Caleb Williams is there, I'm not sure there's going to be much you can say.
Yeah, like Caleb could even be like, I'm not going to the combine, and it'd be okay.
Like Trevor Lawrence didn't throw at the combine. He didn't need to.
But it's like, which evil is the worst evil? Erratic player in college, undersized, or lost basically every big game he played in. Like that. Like, to me, it's like, I don't know who I would take
because then you scenario. You can get into Jalen Hurts, but Jalen Hurts won a ton of games, did complete a high percentage, even though his throwing mechanics were not great in college. He had the other things down, and then people were still mad that they picked him in the second round.
But if I took the names out of the equation and I just asked you, GM in 2035, random person, excellent player, Heisman Trophy winner, undersized incredible athlete, has onions, made great plays, incredible, but is 5'10" and a half, 200 and whatever pounds. Or big, perfect athletic specimen that you would want in an NFL quarterback, fast, agile, can jump out of a building, played erratic in college, but might be able to get coached out with mechanical help. Or really good athlete, best, most accurate arm in the draft, but lost every game that he played in that was important for his team for the most part. Who, like, just blind resume test, who is the guy?
Probably the version of Bryce Young you mentioned.
Yeah. So I think sometimes too, it's just people fall in love with their guy, and it happens at other positions. It's just, quarterback is obviously the make or break for you, because I don't feel like you can do anything in the NFL if you don't have your quarterback. But it's like, don't overthink this here. I think that Bryce should be the first quarterback taken.
And if the Bears don't trade the pick, I think he will be. I think the Texans are going to take him at 2. So the question is, does somebody want to make sure, like, do the Panthers or the Falcons want to make sure they get whoever it is they want, whether that's Young, Richardson, or Stroud, and trade up to trade with the Bears to go up?
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're conceding, I'm assuming Bryce Young, because it sounds like that's who the Texans want. You're conceding him to the Texans.
I think that the 2021 draft was incredibly confusing. I personally would have taken Justin Fields second after Trevor Lawrence in that draft.
Mm-hmm.
But there were 5 guys who played. Some played at different levels, different parts of the country.
Yeah, the Trey Lance thing was
the Trey Lance, but even the BYU thing.
Yeah, the Zach
BYU
Wilson
thing was hard. I think this is pretty straightforward. I think I would go Bryce, CJ, then Anthony Richardson, and I think that is because I put that also on production.
That also could be 1, 2, 3, depending on trades,
how it shakes out, right?
Yeah, or 1, 2, 4, or 1, 2, 5.
I think I would take the bird in the hand when I'm making a decision this big.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, because Richardson is probably not bird in the hand. He's like,
no,
get him and then work on it.
Yeah, you are admitting. And that's why I think for Richardson, the best situation is if, say, the Lions drafted him, because they have Jared Goff under contract for another year. Jared Goff can take them to the playoffs. They should have made the playoffs this year with him as their starter. And then, like, the Seahawks are another one. Geno Smith took them to the playoffs this year. So you could have that kind of Alex Smith guy, and I'm not trying to compare him to Mahomes, but that situation worked out perfectly for the Chiefs, where if you had thrown Patrick Mahomes in, maybe he's as good as he is now, but the way they did it probably helped make him even better. So that's the one where I think there's a chance that.
And I do think that there are some parallels to this draft and to the 2019 draft, right? Like, going into the 2019 draft, there was no question. Like, Kyler Murray that year was the most exceptional player in the sport, right? There was no question about it. He got taken number 1 overall. Then the next 2 quarterbacks off the board were Daniel Jones and then, of course, Kyle Allen. Wait, is that the same draft?
No. You're thinking Josh. That was the year that the Jags took the Kentucky edge rusher Josh Allen. Quarterback Josh Allen went in 2018.
Yeah, that's a bad. There's no parallel whatsoever. But
yeah,
I saw Josh Allen there and on a list, and
that was the wrong one. That was the draft where Lamar Jackson was taken with the last pick of the first round, and that was a guy who had been incredibly productive in college. Now, he didn't have the highest completion percentage his last year; it was like 58 or 59%, but incredibly productive. Obviously, a weapon. And he goes the last pick of the first.
Comp. If everything goes right for him, who is he? Is he Cam Newton? Is that what they say?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Cam Newton was probably the best college football player of all time. He had the measurables and the production.
That's the difference. And he only had 1 season as a major college starter. Now, he did start at Blinn, and he had been.
And then he won a national title in that year.
Right. Exactly. And remember that the stat I always throw out, now, obviously, if Philip Lutzenkirchen hadn't passed away, this number would be higher. But the number of combined NFL starts by non-Cam Newton members of that starting offense for Auburn, you know what it is?
What?
1. That's
your favorite stat in the world. You've said it 100 times.
It's an incredible stat.
It is.
Now They had Nick Fairley on the other side of the ball. He was a first-round D tackle. But, like, can you imagine
that team would get smoked by every college football playoff champion there's been?
Well, that team played and beat a super team, that 2010 Alabama team. Now, that 2010 Alabama team did not have the chemistry that the ones around it did, because they lost 3 games that year. They lost to South Carolina. Shout out Stephen Garcia. They lost to LSU. Shout out Eating Grass. And they lost to Auburn in the comeback game. But that team was loaded. It was loaded. So
I guess it's not fair to criticize a national champion by saying that, but
Cam
teams just aren't built like that anymore.
Cam was otherworldly in college at Auburn. That season he had at Auburn is one of the most dominant seasons you will ever see anybody have anywhere. And that's why when we talk about Anthony Richardson, compare him to Cam, we're just making the physical comparison, because obviously we know that what we saw at Florida was not what we saw at Auburn in 2010. So that's it's not even worth the discussion there. The question is, can someone in the NFL bring out more from Anthony Richardson than his coaching staff at Florida did? Which, by the way, this is a college football podcast. That will become a very interesting college football discussion if someone does.
Yeah.
Because that calls into question what was going on at Florida. Because remember, Dan Mullen didn't want to start him over Emory Jones. And a lot of the things you saw in 2022 when Richardson was the starter for Billy Napier were the things that Dan Mullen was hinting at when he got asked why he wasn't starting him. And then, but if some NFL coach brings out the best in him, Napier and Mullen are going to get dragged over that.
Right.
So we don't know. We do not know what's going to happen. But I do feel very confident in thinking he's probably going to be a top 10 pick, that somebody's not going to be able to resist him.
I think I'm okay with him being a top 10 pick as long as he's not drafted before the other two. Like, I think there's like a world for both of them, right?
I just think a team that drafts him with a plan is doing it right. And a team that drafts him and thinks, okay, he ran a great 40. He had a great vertical jump. We're going to throw him into the starting lineup.
Yeah.
I think you're doing all of you, him and you, a disservice at that point.
And I wonder, if you are drafting him to be the savior of your franchise in year 1, then you're doing it wrong.
Yes, agreed. So, and that leads you to believe that maybe he won't go 1, because you've got to trade really significant assets to the Bears to get up to 1. You're gonna be trading, swapping your first rounder this year, probably trading your first rounder next year. Those are all things that, if you're doing this for the future, then you're also mortgaging your future on that. So I think if where the Lions are, I think the Lions are 6. Like, I think that's where we're probably talking, and Young and Stroud are probably gone by then.